Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and this is probably going to be definitely one of the more recent videos I wanted to do, and it's one that's going to cover an extremely important topic, and something that I know probably a lot of you guys have been hearing about is that Rishi Sunak is desperate to go for a referendum on leaving the European Court of Human Rights. Now, from as far as I can work out, ladies and gentlemen, they don't want to hold a referendum about this, but they kind of have to. But let me explain why they absolutely do not want to hold a referendum about this. Because the fate of what they are doing and whether they will actually allow these flights to Rwanda to go ahead, it all rests on whether or not the British public actually want it. Why is this bad news for the Tories, ladies and gentlemen? Is because, remember, Liz Truss was elected by basically 0.1% of the nation, aka people who were already in the Conservative Party. They were the ones who were responsible for voting in Liz Truss and then with Rishi Sunak. So that's two prime ministers that have not actually had to face a general election. And as for reasons we'll see, is that the Tories would be more than satisfied that if they don't actually have to respond to the votes of the public, they may suggest that, well, this is the single best thing that could happen to them, because I sincerely doubt that the Tories will really want to actually ask the public, because think about it like this, about if, let's say, the Brexit referendum was, if there was a vote to say whether or not we should rejoin the European Union, I honestly think the vote would somehow turn into something like maybe 71% to 29%. For 71 for returning, because what good has Brexit technically done for this nation? Like, at all. For working class people, for middle class people, for the upper classes, for all walks of life in this country. What good has Brexit actually done? And if you're going to quiz people on this, then what happens if a referendum vote for the Court of Human Rights comes into play? Because campaigners and probably people like you and me will have to learn about what the Court of Human Rights actually is, and what the ramifications would involve if we were to leave it. Now, again, the Tories would love you to have you think that, again, that they would just, if we could just pull out of the Court of Human Rights, then that's absolutely fine. Because, once again, the Tories do not want you to actually hold any core values about what actually happens or goes on in society. The Tories would be more than satisfied for us to be kept in the dark about our freedoms, our rights, and especially when it comes to things like the law. Because outside of, the fact that Sir Keir Starmer was the head of the CPS for many years, the Tories don't particularly respect lawyers or prosecutors very much. So what we have, ladies and gentlemen, is a situation involving where the Tories would love just to claim a position of full authority, and for this country to become a single party state, so that they can decide anything that they want, and, well, nothing will change except the rich will get richer, the poor will always pay, and we'll have fewer and fewer ways to actually fight for any level of justice whatsoever. We've discussed these sort of things before with Maximilien Robespierre from another video he put out, but, well, we're going to see exactly if this actually rings home, because personally I think the Tories, I've said my piece, so let's listen to Robespierre.
Hi guys, back in the early 2010s, I thought the idea of a referendum for the UK to leave the European Union was so stupid no Prime Minister or party leader would be dumb enough to actually go ahead with it.
Yeah.
And certainly not to keep a few headbangers in their party happy. Well, I was proven wrong, and the rest is history. So once again, I hear myself asking the same question again. No party leader would be stupid enough to try and hold a referendum on the European Convention on Human Rights. Well, some people at GB News and the Daily Express seem to think it would be a wonderful idea and that the British people can be lied to once again to give away more of their rights and get nothing in return. Have a listen to this.
Asa, do you think there's actually a chance of the Conservatives in the run-up to the next election saying we'll hold a referendum on the ECHR? I imagine they could frame it in such a way that it could mobilise a lot of public opinion, couldn't it?
I think such a referendum would definitely get attention. It would really change the terms of debate, but it's not one you'd expect Rishi Sunak to do. If it was the Tory party led under, say, Suella Braverman, Priti Patel, or many other figures, I'm sure they would be tempted. But then we have to remember who the current Prime Minister is. So given that, you're looking at an election contrast where it's going to be fought on the economy. Just as your poll picks up, that the economy is the biggest concern of voters. Rishi Sunak will try and say that, stick with the plan, don't go back to square one. And all Keir Starmer has to ask is, but do you feel better off after 14 years of Tory government? And then, you look at the rest of the poll, and that shows that, many people will sympathise. On migration and so many other fronts, they see that 14 years of promises, the results really need to speak for themselves. And that's why Sunak is going to have his work cut out, getting that extra term.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what they're referring to, of course, is a GB News poll where a significant number of people supported the idea of the UK leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, as I said before, you don't leave the convention, you leave the Council of Europe, you disapply the European Convention on Human Rights. As I said back before, I didn't think people would be stupid enough to go through with something like this. And it sounds absolutely ridiculous, the idea of having a referendum to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. But we've been down this road before. And I'm concerned because while on paper it doesn't make any sense and it's irrational, politics is irrational. Now, this would be, of course, about taking away the rights of British people to go to a higher court than the UK courts. This is about protecting human rights, protecting freedom of expression, the right to assembly, the right to a free trial. All of these things are protected under the European Convention on Human Rights. So this would be all gone. You hear Tories say, well, it doesn't matter, we would protect people's rights anyway. No, you wouldn't.
No.
You're talking about taking away people's rights. Why would you turn around and say, yeah, but we're going to protect people's rights? Now, this is, of course, being spun as a solution to stopping the boats or the solution to the problems with Rwanda. There's no evidence to back that up. There's no evidence to say that, well, if you left the European Convention on Human Rights, you'd be able to send people to Rwanda. One problem at the moment is Rishi Sunak doesn't actually have any aircraft. No airlines want to be responsible for taking people to Rwanda, including the RAF. So at the moment, even if he was outside the European Convention on Human Rights, he wouldn't have a plane to send people on, unless he's going to use one of his donors or something like that. But of course, there's no mention, which is the most frustrating part of all of this, no mention of Northern Ireland, no mention of the Good Friday Agreement. Is it because people don't know or people just don't care? When it came to Brexit, many of us raised the point of, okay, where is the border going to go? And the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg and Boris Johnson came back and said, don't worry about Northern Ireland, it will be sorted out. And the same here. If you're talking about leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, what happens to the Good Friday Agreement? What happens to the Human Rights Act? It's a cornerstone of the Good Friday Agreement. Nothing. You hear absolutely nothing, be it on GB News or even the BBC or Sky. No one talks about the Good Friday Agreement. Anyone advocating for leaving is never challenged and asked, what's going to happen to the Good Friday Agreement? They probably have never read it, like Dominic Raab. So you're going to have people who don't understand what they're talking about, don't understand what they're voting for something that's going to potentially damage Northern Ireland once again. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think.
You see, again, this is just something that's absolutely Robespierre brings up that, to be honest, is absolutely why people need to be aware of these things. Because it's not just about doing one thing. is that you disrupt the infrastructure on quite a lot of other things as well. Because, well, as I said before, ladies and gentlemen, is that, do they have any plans for this? Or because a lot of aspects about law will have to be revised and rewritten, and things will have to incorporate to suggest the idea that, well, what counts as human rights? What counts as things that can be protected? What are things that what flies in the face of things that we need to be aware of, and what doesn't fly in the face at first sight that we need to absolutely know what the hell is going on? Because I get the impression, and it's not the first time I've had this song and dance routine, ladies and gentlemen, is that what else about the Convention of Human Rights do we need to be made aware of before people tell us it's not worth looking into? Because I reckon in a later video we should do a video talking about the entirety of the Convention of Human Rights, just so we know what your rights are, just so we know what our rights are, and just to know exactly what will happen if those rights were taken away from us, or they were altered in very, very dramatic ways. Because I can't believe it myself. I know it sounds as ridiculous as it gets, but there we are. I'll see all of you guys again next time. Take care, and bye-bye for now.